Okay, Matt the Boat Rat here. On board Grandma Chicky Fender Cuvée in Santa Barbara, February 23rd, 2021. Making a Juan Savin audio book of Kid by the Side of the Road. And I've got this guy, Hawk Marsden, that is going to be reading Kid by the Side of the Road, and I'm going to play him on my phone on the computer reading it, and I'm just going to kick back and listen to it and record it on this video and upload it to YouTube and spread the word around. It's just a way where people can have access to the Kid by the Side of the Road without downloading it and without having to buy it. All you're gonna have to do is just listen. So let me get it going here. This will be chapter 2. If you haven't heard chapter 1 yet, you should be able to on my YouTube channel at Matt Kilrain or at Matt Boat Rat. You should be able to find it there. If you go to boatratmatt.com, there'll be a link to it, and you'll be able to get all my videos there at boatratmatt.com or mattkilrain.com. So here we go.
Must listen. Here at the last day of spring, this particular day is interesting with those people with whom we've been fighting all along. They live their calendar dates, number games, star alignments, and other occult practices. They're a pretty tough crowd to deal with as they're constantly imposing their imagery on us and casting their spells. They see themselves as wizards, warlocks, enchanters, and magicians. And musicians, we might have to actually go back and do a little writing on that because there's been some spells and some songs. Didn't think of that until just now, but we'll leave the musicians out of it for right now.
Just
so
read
today,
the Hawk.
I want to double draw a line in the sand because these wizards of Wall Street in Washington, D.C. made this fight. These people in the financial and political cities have been hurting us here. At the time of this original audio presentation, that day was the ritual summer solstice moment for these occultists, with high noon happening right at that moment in Washington, D.C. That time was 11:54 a.m., which is an interesting number all by itself. Do you know that 11:54 can also represent 9/11? There is the 11, and then 5 plus 4 equals 9. It's a reverse 9/11. That was DC's high noon. How is that, you ask? Well, this Skull and Bones crowd that is variously referred to as the Order or Order 322 and elsewhere as the Brotherhood of Death is an undergraduate secret society made up of select seniors at Yale University. They have a running joke on the rest of us, declaring that Skull and Bones time is 5 minutes ahead of everyone else. After they've completed their high noon at 11:54, we still have 5 minutes before our high noon. From their perspective, we are continuously lagging behind and following them as we experience the world through the course they've laid in advance. From the time we first came here on through today, the history of our country has been an ongoing battle between freedom seekers and the ruling bloodline families we've been made to follow. Who's in control? Do we choose our course or keep trailing behind on their course? Are we working for ourselves or for them? The first settlers sought to flee the proximity of the controlling families while agreeing to pay a portion of their lives' energy to the bloodline-owned corporations in return for their passage. Besides religious freedom, they did not want to be subject to someone else's dictates on every aspect of their lives, like where to live, what to plant, and who they'd otherwise be subject to. They fled those controlling blue blood family lines who believe they have the authority to rule because one or both of their parents have the right blood. These Cainite descendants of Cain bloodline families think they are not just merely human, but are more than human. While we are only here to be their servants and slaves, even prior to our Declaration of Independence, the people that came here and built out America were seeking self-determination to escape these controllers and have their own land where they could conduct life according to their own whim and will. The problem was that those European leaders could not leave well enough alone and just let us come here, be our own people, and agree to trade with us. Instead, they continued expanding and extending their rule across the Atlantic in a never-ending effort to dominate and tax us. They made the rules for us, sent their red-coated soldiers over here, and worked out reigning over our cities and leaders, forcing us to serve the king. Eventually, the people had had enough. It started in Massachusetts, where they famously orchestrated the Boston Tea Party, dumping England's heavily taxed tea in the water and thereby sending this message: we will no longer pay your onerous taxes. We don't want your tea, and if you continue to run your prices to the moon, we'll provide our own or switch to coffee, which likely explains the American preference for coffee to this very day. Speaking of which, grab a sip here. And again, this American makes some kick-ass coffee. Hell yes. Is my stream freezing and starting? Uh-oh. I hope not. Okay, so continuing on. The new Americans didn't like how their foreign rulers came here and imposed taxes, not giving us a say in how that tax money was to be spent. Virtually none of the funds taken supported development of smooth running colonies and infrastructure. Instead, all that compensation for our labor was going to any whim of foreign mischief by the king and his court. And that's the same struggle we fight today with federal taxes that ship our hard-earned money to Washington, where it's dispensed at the behest of well-paid lobbyists for the advantage of their corporate and foreign nation-state benefactors. Like those early American crown-designed taxes, our present tax structure goes to fund their wars and other mischief. We're stuck paying their bills. Those colonists didn't like that, didn't want it, and weren't going to continue being used as slaves. The early colonists were mostly Christians who looked at things in a biblical context. They saw these taxes as a form of slavery they must throw off, like that represented by Egypt in the biblical narrative. It is interesting that Washington is saturated with so much Egyptian symbology. For example, most people don't know that the root word for president is pharaoh. Just as the colonists had to fight for their independence from their European corporate masters and kings, today we cannot expect these people to just go away. We also have to fight Washington and the broader globalist corptocracy. Well, I haven't seen that word before. Corptocracy, to regain our freedom. When we think about what America is and what defines an American, it's really an attitude. We are not solely a place on a map. America is a way of thinking, an idea, an ideal. We conduct our lives within laws and a community that adhere to principles under God's authority and function together with product of our work being applied to our own purposes. An American is not one to be under the rule of some king or his minions who would convert our labor to their gain and their children's blood to pull off their wars. We are unwilling to function as transplanted Egyptians. We are a new people, our own people. And that's the purpose of drawing two deep lines in the sand with our Bill of Rights and the Constitution. As a country, we claimed and proclaimed our God-given authority to elect leaders from our own families and communities without interference, thereby determining our own destiny. Against those principles for a long, long time now, these manipulating hidden rulers of our lives have been fooling us by sifting their people into our midst at key positions, their loyalists who would look out for their interests, employing every way possible to control us. Over and over and over, they have strategically placed infiltrators who daily work at steering us into following their will, way, and timing. Back when America's government was founded, the situation came to a boil as the colonists tired of those European controllers and their constant attempts to rule us. Throughout the colonies, numerous patriots utilized the then new printing presses as a sort of internet of their era. They published their thoughts in the form of pamphlets, which competed with the newspapers of the day, exchanging various and oftentimes conflicting ideas about how men should govern their affairs at the city, state, national, and international levels. When these men gathered to work out the final details and sign the Declaration of Independence, that was the culmination of countless individual hours, days, months, and even decades during which our people had rich private and public conversations, including plenty of heated discord, before eventually arriving at those concepts in our sacred documents that we eventually built an entire country around. With the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th of 1776, the founders drew their first deep line in the sand, committing their lives and fortunes to this new idea and grand experiment. The concept they backed together was unique in the modern world. A nation not governed perpetually by kings and bloodlines, but instead administered by the best and the brightest based on their character, leadership, and ability for innovation, as well as the right to be judged exclusively by a jury of their peers, those first Americans announced to the world. We will no longer be anyone's slaves. We will not serve any foreign masters. We will not have people ruling and reigning over us just from some false claim of blood right. That will not be allowed. We will elect leaders who fit our ideals, follow our principles, and perform the roles that we as a community have collectively agreed upon. We're not going to let you dictate our lives and send our children to die in wars for your fits and fancy or random blood feuds with your bloodline relatives ruling neighboring countries. We aren't going to be your mercenaries, contributing our lives and the substance as fodder for your cannons. In 1776, during the week surrounding the summer solstice, the people who founded this country were very clear about where their heads were at. It was a time when their ancestors gathered and discussed all these things at bars and taverns, which were the social gathering places in those days, as well as in the churches where pastors were speaking about slavery, freedom, and biblical history. Lessons like how an ancient Egyptian monarchy oppressed the people of God, so he told his servant Moses to go get my kids, lead them out of slavery to a new land I will show you, and teach them how to live. Pretty interesting. Like those hinge points with the Egyptian captivity of God's people and the many important moments leading up to the American Revolution of 1776, today we're at another turning point. The reality of our modern day society involves those supposedly Russian dossier that was concocted and constructed to affect the outcome of an American presidential election to manipulate who we Americans would choose as our leader and thereby dictate the allegiances and principles steering our country. We cannot forget that the dossier was put together by nefarious performers working out of the city of London. Longtime players in the leadership of our FBI and CIA, together with other foreign intelligence agencies around the world, schemed as they came and went from London, conspiring against the American people to retain their leadership of the U.S. through this governing group of bought-off saboteurs who would continue to pursue their globalistic goals and ambitions. It is about who they are and what they are, regardless of our wishes, because they have only disdain for us, who they see as a lesser species. That's what this battle is all about right now, and the people who paid attention get it. But a lot of our neighbors haven't figured all this out yet. They're still asleep. They've been led astray by the mainstream news. Our napping neighbors, friends, and family don't understand that these infiltrators continue to manipulate us on so many levels, and it is still happening right now. Many near us now know nothing about this, so it's hard for them to even begin to get their minds wrapped around this. But think about this. The manipulation wasn't initiated just a few years ago or even a couple of presidents earlier. They had these plans and aspirations to control us even before our early leaders signed that freedom document centuries ago. And just as our founders came together to draw that line saying slaves no more, that battle cry is being repeated right now as they try to getting us back under their rule after a president they don't control won our 2016 U.S. election. And even after our breakaway beginning as a country, they still tried forcing us back under their will with more conflict like the War of 1812, which was not long after we'd already spent a decade fighting the Revolutionary War and the lead up to it. As a brotherhood of free men, when our founders branded that document that declared our God-given freedom, it was the final step in their evolving mindset that brought them to this vow. We will all hang together in this act of rebellion against our oppressors rather than surely being hung separately. Today we abbreviate that as WWG1GWGA. Where we go one, we go all. And if we really want to expand on that, it would be where we go one, we go all worldwide. On July 5th of 1776, the word of their actions went out, and it was only a matter of time before the lead or the lead would be exchanged. Most don't know it outright, though those sleeping can at least feel it at some level. Today, we're back at that same sort of situation. Revelations about the infiltrators are coming out daily and even hourly now as we reassert our independence and sovereignty, both individually and nationally, from foreign rule, mischief, taxes, and paying for their proposed bullshit green energy deceptions that supposedly save the planet. We are being forced to prepare for this coming time when we will need to re-explain that they're not going to rule us from afar, and certainly not through their sabotage and treachery, especially from within. You see, over all these years, every time we turn around, and we've been trying to put deception mechanisms in play that cause us to, or they've been trying to put deception mechanisms in play that cause us to fight a war for them. And what's their goal? They're not happy to rule all of Europe or even with adding control over America. These foreign masters and hidden hand families want to rule the entire planet, the whole planet. A lot of people are Masons, including some reading this now. they're hearing me say this, so I just asked them to think about the prominent Freemason author Albert Pike, who wrote Morals and Dogma. Pike's book gives the philosophical rationale behind the ascending levels of Freemasonry and makes it very clear that they serve Satan. Speaking to possible Masons in this audience, you may trust those beliefs because your Masonic meetings are held in a church with members who are honorable and decent people, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The devil himself enjoys that you are deceived, and as you progress through Freemasonry ranks, the reality is that the foundation and the purpose of these hidden organizations is a new world order, not built on the principles of God in heaven, but instead led by Masonic leadership's God, Lucifer. These people are sun worshippers. It's why they're so excited about orchestrating a summer solstice celebration to honor the sun that is supposedly rising on all their schemes and machinations. They're having all their rainbow gatherings and celebrations of a supposed new light, a time of coming into their so-called new day. Well, I'm here to tell you all that is turning around right now. This isn't about their sunrise and their rising over us to dictate our lives. Though they may not understand the full extent, this is their sunset. This is the sun setting and all their trickery and devices employed in secret to take over our country and rule us by deception. They send their infiltrating and sabotaging leaders into our institutions, businesses, media, and entertainment to do the bidding of their masters against us, the American people. This moment is about the process of extinguishing their sun, just as 2016's election of President Trump was. His second election, God willing, is going to be their sunsetting in spades. And they know the loss they face, which explains the accelerating chaos that they are now causing as we approach the 2020 election. We are in this moment where the revelations and revolutions are coming faster than anyone can believe. It will continue to be astonishing about how quickly new eye-openers will keep revealing more of what they've been doing against us behind the scenes. This will continue over the next few years as the new light of these manipulators dims. We've seen what's coming. We know it. Now the sun's going to begin setting on them, while at the same time our new generation of patriots are entering another American revolution as we go from darkness back to the divine light. Though untrue, a lot of people have been led to believe these issues have to do with left and right. Instead, it's about right and wrong. Are we headed to heaven or hell? Do we follow those on a heavenly course or the ones taking us that hellish route? These people create our entertainment and sports heroes, political leaders, and the media with its constantly false narratives that they program into our heads through repetition. And that is so true. Give me a second, I need to light this. Okay. Think of all the people out there we've been taught to idolize as the good guys, are supposedly respectable and important leaders. Ones that come to mind is the mischief surrounding John Kerry. It's funny, I just saw something about John Kerry today. He's another one of those no names. Pretty soon his name will never be seen again. So back to this. Okay, let me start this one over. Think of all the people out there we've been taught to idolize as good guys, are supposedly respectable and important leaders. One that comes to mind is the mischief surrounding John Kerry. Look what happened with him in his pursuit of 3 Purple Hearts during the Vietnam War. That last scratch was so minor, the medical personnel asked him if he even wanted a bandage because it hardly had any blood coming out from it. They couldn't believe he wanted a Band-Aid, let alone a Purple Heart. Those near the incident said, "You've got to be kidding us. We have kids going home in body bags to their devastated families, and you want a Purple Heart for that bullshit." In fact, it's questionable if the event ever happened, which I'll be good. I'll be good. I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna be good. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back with you folks. I'm gonna be good. I am gonna be good. Okay. In fact, it's questionable if the event ever happened while the satanic cult was manufacturing that hero. Look at the fake stars we get out of Hollywood, like Katy Perry. She was brought into our White House by one of the previous president's puppets. For her visit, they changed the formal dining room color to red. Who is she, and what does she say? On national television, Katy Perry talked about how human flesh is more nutritious than any other kind of food. Let me read that part again. On national television, Katy Perry talked about how human flesh is more nutritious than any other kind of food. This came from the woman who confessed that she could not get fame as a Christian singer, so she made a deal with the devil to be successful. Seriously, is that someone we invite to sing at the White House, our country's presidential mansion, let alone celebrating her satanic side by making the formal dining room blood red? It's no wonder Melania wouldn't go into the White House until it was cleansed, after which Trump said Satan had been evicted from the building. You're right. It's all about the coffee. it's all about the coffee. It's oh my. This is something, isn't it? Is when you sit back and you read this, and you're beginning to understand the level in which this evil has been perpetrated and cast about us, and the fact that we don't see it. You got everybody throwing up the horn hands and everything else, and it's like, wait a minute here. If they'd done that 100 years ago, they'd have been hung as a witch, kind of thing. And instead, now we're inviting them into the White House and painting the dining room blood red. Doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense to me at all. Does it make sense to you? I didn't think so. All right, back to it. People don't understand this moment in time is about right or wrong, heaven or hell. Those who don't choose a side and only stand on the sidelines to watch are going to slip right into Gomorrah, into hell itself. You have to make a choice. When those men put pen to paper on July 4th, 1776, drawing a line in the sand by signing our Freedom Declaration, they knew it was authorizing their own death warrant, but they wanted to give this clear statement. King George, we will not be your slaves. We're adults with our own nation, and we won't be putting up with you or your minions anymore. From that point, it was all out war. Today, those same people continue trying to control us and our nation. That's what this moment is all about. If you don't see that, you're not paying attention. Those conspirators like Mr. Brennan, you know who I'm talking about, Obama's CIA director, and Mr. Comey, Obama's FBI chief, are about to be picked up and charged with treasonous crimes against our nation because they've been involved with subversive activities. These treacherous people conspired with the foreign governments and the players for those governments, some of whom are modern-day Benedict Arnolds like Stefan Halper, who was a spy way back against Ronald Reagan's administration. And just recently, that same guy tried to become a spy on the inside again, working against President Trump's campaign, while also serving as a foreign agent to try engineering the defection of others like George Papadopoulos. Halper worked at getting others to turn against Trump and became inside spies, as did others such as Joseph Mifsud, and all of his friends from academia to roll over and also become spies. Are you kidding me? Again, this is about right and wrong, a heavenly course or a hellish direction. These people they select and promote as our leaders, especially if we go the way that today's Democrats are pushing us, would have pedophilia as a lifestyle. They claim it's just another life choice. Seriously? Are we supposed to accept adults molesting and raping children as an acceptable way of life? We will not allow them to implement that demonic practice. If you don't think we're dealing with right or wrong, you're not paying attention. It's not left versus right, it's right versus wrong. And who are some other leaders they've been giving to us fairly recent? It was Bill Clinton, who got a Fulbright scholarship. What did that Arkansas Senator J. William Fulbright stand for while he was on the payroll of these bloodline families? Fulbright claimed that our Constitution is an outdated document that causes problems for each president in handcuffs. But that is exactly what our founders meant it to do as a safety measure against corrupt leaders like Bill Clinton, who was given this guy's scholarship because Clinton believes that crap. Then where did Clinton go? He got a Rhodes Scholarship. Well, what is the Rhodes Scholarship about? Britain's Cecil Rhodes believed the United States had gone astray and needed to be brought back under the crown. Under the Queen and England's rule in 1877, Arthur Rhodes said this: "Why should we not form a secret society with but one object, the bringing of the whole world under British rule for recovery of the United States?" Why should we not form a secret society with but one objective, the bringing of the whole world under British rule for recovery of the United States? Makes you think, doesn't it? Just a little bit. His proclamation probably became even more successful than he had hoped. Rhodes taught... I lost myself. Oh, there we go. Rhodes taught that all Americans needed to be herded back under England, brought into the nations under the authority of the British Crown, agreeing with that garbage as well. Bill Clinton also received that guy's scholarship. Are you kidding me? And these awards that Clinton got for conspiring to sell out the United States and its Constitution supposedly qualified him to be president of this free country. No, both those scholarships disqualified him. Why are we getting these kinds of people put into our leadership? Who is making it all happen behind the scenes? Who is promoting them? If we look back at what Albert Pike compiled from the secret teachings of his Freemason society and put into book form with morals and dogma, what do Masons say? They tell us it will take 3 world wars for them to realize their great work. And what is the accomplishment they seek? It is to create a planet with all people under the authority of their sun god, Satan, a world subjugated to their type of rule under their father, the devil. This was disclosed by Pike, who was the head of the Freemasonry. Anyone who does not think Lucifer leads Freemasonry does not understand. The average Mason goes through all the ranks thinking it is about good deeds, helping our children, and other wonderful attributes. But if that's all, what is the Masonic checkerboard symbol about? If represents their claim to do both good and bad works, thereby balancing them out. But hey, they often meet in Christian churches, so they must be okay, right? No, it's bullshit. They're about doing the works of darkness and the bidding of their sun god Satan. If you are part of that organization or others like, you need to think again about what you're actually involved with and whether or not you're just a useful tool in Satan's design. In reality, since Pike laid out their Masonic game plan, what has happened to the Earth's people? We've been corralled, herded, stampeded towards some kind of a grand and ultimately cataclysmic event, after which all the children of Adam should kneel under their subjugation. They wish all the planets, lawful governments, to be wiped out. Then and only then can their worldwide Roman-type fascist, dictatorial, and one-world government rule over the compliant communist and socialist communities that they have made. For those in search of a greater understanding on these matters, research the Fasces lapel pin mace of the United States House of Representatives, which had tremendous symbolic meaning when Nancy Pelosi wore it during the Trump impeachment hearings. Also, take a look at the Fasces fascist-rooted bundles of wood rods that are prominently displayed right there on both sides of the speaker's chair and podium. That's not what we want, and it's not what is right. How much blood needs to be spilled on their path to get there? And anyone who doesn't think they've been successful at pulling this off is not paying attention. Though their corrupt media and other institutions have caused it to immediately be dismissed as a crazy conspiracy theory, the Illuminati is real. But maybe a better way to approach family and friends with the information is to call them the bloodline families. 2 months before we established our United States with our Declaration of Independence, they began their organization on May 1st of 1776 in Bavaria, Germany, where these Illuminati bloodline families were hard at it, even getting their side going a bit ahead of us. Ever since, they have been infiltrating our society's leadership positions with people who understand and agree with them. In fact, a lot of our founding fathers were in these organizations, and however, over the course of the Revolutionary War with England and continuing through the years after, many of them disavowed those relationships with the Masons, as well as other secret handshakes club like the Illuminati. Why? They came to understand that these organizations weren't actually working in the best interest of America, that these secret societies had plans and ideals against the independence of individual Americans that allow us to live our own desired way of life. So many of these men repented of their earlier involvement in these frat boy groups that are really being led by Satanists and subversives. This is that moment when we need people to think again about what they are actually involved in and who they really associating with. Then choose good over evil. That's what this is all about. And at this time, in this moment, it's high noon in America. Joe Biden said the Democrats need to figure out how to work with Republicans, but then while making a gesture like he was holding an assault rifle, Biden added this: if we can't, it's going to get physical. Look at the picture of that event and then tell me I'm not seeing the shooting gesture. Hello. And what is the context of his declaration? He's letting us know they are coming after Republicans. Really? If you or I did that, imagine the outrage the media storm inflicted to tear us apart, the drama and operatic responses. That is bullshit. They are the ones pushing this fight to a head as they brag about bringing flesh eaters into our White House, put up their monuments to Isis and Osiris, work at allowing Satan to rule over our country, and use their owl symbols while practicing their rituals and secrets. Little handshake clubs all over Washington, D.C. They're the ones doing that. It's not what we want and not something common in America. Instead, this agenda is being imposed on us by a cult that wants just one international society that has them governing the whole world. Their plan originated in Europe, and it wasn't just London. It's Bavarian, Germany. The Q team asked the question of whether the UK's Mother Teresa, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 2016 to 2019, Germany's Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany since 2005, and Lithuanians Dalia Grybauskaitė. You guys can figure that name out for yourselves. President of Lithuania from 2009 until 2019 are sisters. There was actually a photograph. I'm going to pause this for a second. There was actually a photograph of the three of them together as youths. Youths. You gotta love my cousin Vinny. Youths. The youths. As youths, they had a photo taken, and the three of them actually looked like they looked like little Satanists. Then they had like no remorse in their eyes or face or anything. They were very hollow. But okay, back to it. When that information was first put out there, it was, of course, dismissed by those complicit. Yet, they never denied the claim. Even some good people had a hard time accepting that one and thought maybe we were just moving too fast at uncovering the conspiracy. At that point, we could not accept something so explosive. There are a number of very interesting theories about their parentage, if indeed they are sisters. But now, we're coming of age after having grown up in this false narrative created to deceive us. Again, one aspect of all of this that we need to be mindful of and not forget, especially folks a bit older like myself, is our country's defining moment that came much prior to 9/11. With the whole world watching in 1963, they assassinated our president. About that tragedy, there was no truth told to us by the fake media, from the halls of Congress or coming out of the White House. All we got were lies. Every word was a lie, including that a lone gunman killed the president. That was one of the most monstrous lies in the history of this country and even the world. And why did they kill Kennedy? It was those same secret societies ruling us from afar, manipulating us from behind the curtains. And those of us around at that time stood by the side of the road, watching and participating in the aftermath. Every last one of us has grown up in the shadow of that moment. The people who pulled that off have continued all of their evil machinations, while we came of age watching. For their purposes, they've continued to deceive us ever since, putting their players in governance over us, controlling, managing, and steering our course from foreign soil. They put us into the wars where our parents, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, wives, and husbands have been injured and killed. They have also been destroying other countries as part of their plan to force migrations, resulting in the side damage of millions more dead. And it's all done to facilitate the construction of their new world order, built on a foundation of those people's bones. If they continue to have their way, it will be billions more. Those reading this need to be part of the solution instead of compounding the problem. We cannot stand idly by and accept their plans for us. Had they gotten their way, we would not have President Trump. But with the effort to stop their satanic aspirations, our problem is this: the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. President Trump is a nail sticking up. Like me and many of of you, a lot of us are also sticking up, but they want to hammer us back down, subjugating and destroying every individual dissenter as their method to keep the world's people under their thumb. Now, we don't have to be ridiculous with how we go about it, and certainly don't need to act like assholes, but if you're not taking a stand, being outspoken, and clearly making your views understood within your family and community, now is that moment to stand and be counted. If you don't, down the road, you're going to wish you had, because this revolution is well underway and will continue. These next few years are going to set the world on fire. You need to be part of bringing that change. The crises we must deal with are whether we end up having to do it by ourselves or if we are the ones letting others do it alone. Either way, that puts pressure on those taking a stand to help eliminate this threat to our country and the world. If there is just a nail sticking up here or there, those will easily be taken out by these globalists, leaving them to grab everything without opposition. These people will snip out the individual threats, while it was just one president and a few around him being surrounded by these traitors with their different ideas and perspective. Those patriots could be hunted and eliminated. And seeing that, others who might have thought to stick up also became discouraged as they ducked for cover. For the traitors, it is a mission accomplished, and once more, positive reform does not go forward. So these people have kept getting their way through drug money scores in Southeast Asia and South America. With these ill-gotten gains, they own politicians, buy off police, change the course of elections, and promote their people up through the ranks to top positions at the news networks in Hollywood and at the FBI, CIA, and every other agency. They can buy anything and anyone, while all we get are lies and fakes. And they've been successful at their schemes for a long time. In 1912, Hitler went to London, where he learned from the Tavistock Institute, Britain's social engineering organization, another globalist operation. He practiced the presentation and the oration of his future speeches, which became famous. Some scholars provide documentation asserting that Hitler himself was trained or programmed, in today's terms, we would say MK Ultra, at Tavistock. Ultimately, this would have made him a British intelligence tool in the years before the war. About the same time, Hitler was visiting Vienna, Austria. Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin were also there. Did these men hang out together? Who knows if they crossed paths? But we do understand Vienna has the bankers who promote the future leaders they can control. After Vienna, these men were suddenly able to go out and start their own expensive revolutions. From the London and New York bankers, money was made available to take out Russia's ruling class through the ensuing communist revolution. Over and over for centuries, they have been executing their subversive designs around our planet. Decade after decade after decade, we've been continuously fighting this little cartel of clans. And now, in our time, what are their tactics against us? These globalists use their intelligence operations and policing agencies while colluding to control businesses and leverage entire governments around the world. A decade after creating the CIA in the summer of 1947, near the end of his life, Truman stated his belief that the CIA had become equivalent of the American Gestapo. He regretted ever approving its establishment. Where does all that money, expertise, technology keep coming from to make Iran the best enemy money can buy, just as they did with Russia a century ago? How about North Korea? And what about the most recent example? billions and billions are airlifted into Tehran, Iran. At the end of the Obama admin, once again perpetuating and funding another $150 billion. Best enemy money can buy. Even with inflation, that kind of money still buys a world-class enemy. We are being bounced back and forth across the globe like a ping pong ball. As soon as Iran is under control, North Korea erupts. When North Korea seems to be handled, Syria erupts. And then it's Taiwan, after which our next problem pops up with Ukraine. On and on it goes. These are globalist-induced gyrations that continuously keep us off balance and unable to focus. The purpose of which is to con us into perpetual servitude, manufacturing and wielding swords instead of the productive plowshares we should be putting to work to help people, not fighting with and killing them. In this way, they dominate and control the world according to their globalist ideologies. Not a classic and correct American ideology and mindset. Using perversions of true American views, we are manipulated to do their bidding. In the projection of ourselves out to the world, the American way is not one of being our brother's keeper. Instead, it is to be our brother's brother, reaching out to help other nations as opposed to the constant thirst for domination that those colonizing and centralizing crown families like to put people under. They manufacture enemies to divide and weaken us, enriching themselves and enslaving us. They get us constantly focused on those villains that they claim are out to end our way of life. Meanwhile, their daily treason is uninterrupted as they use sleight of hand, their magical illusion to keep us looking the other way. Who put up the money for London's Tavistock Institute, created in 1946, as well as Rand Corporation, created in 1948 here in the U.S., both of which look for ways to engineer and manipulate societies? Why did they put Lookout Mountain Air Force Base at the top of Laurel Canyon in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles? Who goes there and for what purpose? They claim it was a place to perfect a high technology camera equipment near the film capital of the world, as well as develop and edit film of nuclear detonations. But that's not the whole story. For their manipulative purposes, it was also a facility where they trained future movie stars, musicians, media figures, and other influencers used in the globalists' propaganda. From this hub location, they could influence American society and the rest of the world, assisting entertainers to become successful in exchange promoting the globalist agenda. And that included superstar Marilyn Monroe, who got a top secret security clearance for Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. What was she doing there? Well, Monroe was made available to kick off Playboy magazine first issue in 1953. She was a national darling who had never shown her naked body until needed for that first Playboy centerfold. Where did the founder of Playboy, Hugh Hefner, get his money? It took 70 years, but the CIA is finally admitting they created honeypot traps like Playboy and the sexually enticing Playboy Mansion to make sex with beautiful women available so that they could blackmail those who could not resist the temptation. The story claims it was only for blackmailing foreign leaders who were given access to the sex mansion. But were foreigners the only ones? And what about all the movies influenced through that Laurel Canyon operation, as well as singers from Lookout Mountain, who just happened to cause our social revolution in the 60s? It was the same sort of music-led social change happening at that time in England. And by the way, the rumors of Paul McCartney's death in the 60s are true. That famous leader of the most famous band in history, the Beatles, actually died on November 9th, 11/9 of 1966, after which he was replaced by a lookalike. Check into it for yourself. Even when the opposite is true, they control the way society thinks so they can make you believe anything they want, including whether a person is dead or alive. Those who poke their head up to say, no, I don't believe that, quickly get hammered down, and if the resistance to their outright lies continues, the manipulators bring out the sledgehammer. Still more denial of their deception will cause the dissenter to be pulverized into nothing. That simple process continues indefinitely as long as it's just a nail sticking up here and there. The only way we win from this point forward is the same way we were successful with our first revolution against the same people. If the signers of that freedom and independence declaration had been the only ones to stand up, the Brits would have captured and hung every last one. As it was, England did get to a bunch of them, destroying their properties and even entire families. Not everyone walked away. Along with those signers of our declaration, Americans stood up and got counted, just as we collectively must do today. We need to say we won't accept any more fake news, phony stars, and bogus wars. We won't fall for it the next time they try baiting us with deceptive narratives like, hey, look, this is horrible. The babies are being taken out of their incubators somewhere in the world, so we have to bomb the people responsible. It's for the babies. Or, I think a boat fired a bullet at our ship somewhere in the Gulf of Tonkin, or a drone in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's go to war. Then there are the really big events they pull off, like 9/11, which resulted in us supposedly having to blast Iraq and Afghanistan into smithereens. What did these countries have to do with anything that happened on 9/11? Do you understand that they took down our enormous twin towers in a ritual moment, just like the event I referenced earlier about their ritual time of 11:54 in Washington, D.C.? What is the occult and hidden religious significance with their large number of ritual buildings that they had methodically and precisely constructed under the sacrificial altar site of the Twin Towers? The place where the veil between the earthly and the demonic realms was ritually rent and opened by them on 9/11. Within an approximate 10-mile radius of the towers is much of their deity-type statuary standing as idolic and demonic witnesses to the destructive events of 9/11. These many ritual buildings and the statuary that surround the area includes another of their symbols honoring Isis, their Egyptian goddess. They stuck it right in the middle of New York Harbor. It's our so-called Statue of Liberty. Like their flame at JFK's grave, that ISIS torch is a part of their satanic ritual. Again, multiple structures and buildings around the vicinity of where those two towers have a ritual meaning, which includes a fairly new ornament that mysteriously popped onto the scene several years ago, the Wall Street Bull. It must have taken a sculptor tens of thousands of dollars to create that bull statue, which is one more of their ritual symbols. Even the United Nations is backing all of this up, helping facilitate their plans for us. Why? For what purposes? The same people that funded the property given for the UN also put up the money for those 9/11 buildings. It was the Rockefeller family. From that family, have we been subjected to Trojan horses that most haven't known about? Yes. Bill Clinton is a Rockefeller. His dad is Winthrop Rockefeller. What you got with Clinton was a story, another false narrative for you to believe. They told us William Blythe was his father, but it's more fake news. You wouldn't elect him to office as a Rockefeller, so they had to give him a different name. That false identity kept you from shutting him down. But there he is, hiding in plain sight. And there are a lot of those disguised players all around, creating whatever illusions they want for us as wizards. That is what they take delight in. And those same self-proclaimed sorcerers tell us Michael Rockefeller disappeared on a trip to Papua New Guinea. What really happened to him? Many have come to believe, as I do, that he is still alive today, and you know him as Forrest Gump and Woody. He is one of the most elite Hollywood stars and another product from Disney. Tom Hanks was a Disney child. To fool us, they use makeup and surgery as well as contrived histories. His big breakthrough was a romantic fantasy about a mermaid who falls in love with a human. It was the 1984 Disney movie Splash, which featured him and Daryl Hannah. So wake up, stop buying their lies. Like me in the past, you're probably just been just another kid on the side of the street at critical moments in our history. Oh, okay. Like me in the past, you've probably been just another kid on the side of the street at critical moments in our history, often not completely understanding what the hell is happening as they play on your patriotism. Because they see you as so dumb you won't figure it out, they feed on who you are and what you desire to be. But now you have to grow up. This book is about that moment where we all mature as a nation, take on our responsibility as adults and begin to say, no more. We will not be your slaves anymore. We will no longer be buying your lies. We're done with that. And if you want to try manipulating our elections, again, attempting to decide who we get, or if you try to snipe out our choice, it's time. This time, it will matter. We're not going to continue to let one family of good people whose head occupies the White House carry the weight for our whole nation. And even if you succeed in taking an entire family out, though we won't let you, the rest of us will still be standing here together against you. With each instance where they have targeted one of our presidents, it's always been more than that. When they are targeting our leaders, up to and including our president, the crosshairs are just as much, or even more so, on us as people. These leaders are our chosen representatives to do our will according to the principles and laws embedded in the Constitution and its supporting documents. We don't shirk from the battle to protect the Constitution and its proper administration. Rather, we put on better armor, divinely provided armor, and dig the lines deeper. When they cross our lines in the sand, we start taking them out. We are all that kid standing by the side of the road. We have all grown up in the shadow of these events. The globalistas have been relentlessly working to drive us down the cattle chute of history towards their new world order. And to that we must say, we're not going there with you. We're not doing it. We are going to kick you in the ass and boot you the hell out of our country. I'd advise you to tighten your shoelaces and run faster, because when we get our hands on your scruffy necks, we're going to throw you in the clinker for as long as humanly possible. If you think we'll continue to put up with your shit, I'm here to tell you that's not happening. The good guys are closing ranks, and we're taking our country back. We're going to rid ourselves of you monsters and treasonous vermin. Promises made, promises kept. Some will be going to jail, a lot more to Gitmo. In front of the whole world, we will soon see hearings where these people would be made to sit and explain why they did what they felt was so justified to do. Of course, they will have their secret handshake allies in political office who will try protecting them with all sorts of stupid investigative delays and political procedures. It'll be like a scene from the Godfather movies. But in the end, this time, you're going to see real prosecutions. There is a reason President Donald Trump upgraded our prison holding capacity at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and it's no lark. live action role-playing game is what LARP stands for. That our country has over 195,000 federal sealed indictments at the time of this writing. Normally, our 94 federal judicial districts carry a running average of around 1,500 total sealed indictments nationwide. So we are now at approximately 130 times the usual number of sealed indictments and still climbing. That reality is no game. It's a washish dream on the part of those under the cloud of indictment that these charges will somehow go away. Additionally, one sealed indictment can have up to 9 persons listed. These people named in the indictments have no prayer that these charges will just go away. Every single sealed indictment was handed down by a federal grand jury made up of 14 to 23 citizen voters, not some political flunky like bought-off prosecutor or judge. The battles in this long war are coming to a head, and we all need to do our part, assembling together in this fight. While we may have been the kid when it all started, we are not anymore. Though traumatized through several generations, we are waking and standing up to be counted in the spirit of that child who is now grown. We cannot allow those who have come of age and moved to the front of the fight to then be hammered back down. Whether Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever, this is not just about one person or family. We have never wanted and don't need an American version of royalty to rule over us. From an American viewpoint, we are all royalty, every person, a sovereign in his or her own home. In this way, our enemies cannot defeat us by taking out any one individual. A great patriot example from the Democrat side was a guy you've probably not heard of. His name was Al Smith. He was a Democrat's Democrat in the 1920s and 1930s. He was a staunch supporter of President Roosevelt. But from Smith's perspective, by 1936, the Democrat Party had become so twisted and constantly maligned for their behavior and what they supported that Smith said he was watching the party of Jefferson, Jackson, and Cleveland being turned into the party of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. Again, Smith was a Democrat's Democrat of his day, but even this prominent and highly respected leader who could always be counted on to cheerlead the Democrat Party no longer wanted to be in that situation, being counted in that Democrat crowd. So Alfred Smith made a famous and final speech where he included this simple proclamation: "I'm out." After which he walked away from the Democrat Party and never came back for the rest of his life. Smith would not be counted as a traitor to his fellow citizens. He would not participate in the globalista-inspired Democratic lies. Many know President Reagan started life as a Democrat. His famous 1964 speech, "A Time for Choosing," came in the shadow of that secret handshake club with globalistic ideals and ambitions who had murdered our president the previous year. Reagan's time for choosing speech defined him, Reagan's time for choosing speech defined him as a leader and led him to becoming governor of California and then president of the United States. Ronald Reagan's message was given after he had switched political parties. It defined the difference is between the way the two organizations thought. Considering what has happened to the party over the last 30 or 40 years, just like Ronald Reagan and Al Smith, President Kennedy would have left today's Democrat Party long ago. This modern Democrat group is against JFK's character, ideals, and way of thinking. Today's Dems, such as Pelosi, Ocasio-Cortez, and the Biden-Harris crowd, have lost their way. On the other side, there may be many reading this who can't get excited about President Trump for whatever reason. Maybe it's that you think he's a bit caustic, coming across with a different demeanor than you'd like to see or think is right. It could be that you disagree with him on climate change or some other issue. Well, all right, let's have a conversation. But I would like to ask you not to think in terms either Democrat or Republican parties who both hate him. Let me make appeal to your humanity. Is the idea of murdering and dismembering children in the womb acceptable to you? Then go ahead and vote Democrat. If the idea that pedophilia is an acceptable way of life in our society and we should be more accepting of it as a nation, then vote Democrat. If you sincerely believe state child welfare agencies should take children away from their parents who own guns because you believe gun ownership and right of self-defense is dangerous, then vote Democrat. If you think state agencies should be allowed to take children away because a parent wants to homeschool using religious materials, which you think are dangerous to a child's mental development, then vote Democrat. If you believe children should be mandated to receive every possible vaccine that a drug company proposes, and that the state should force parents to proceed with all immunizations or lose custody of their children, then vote Democrat. In fact, no further thought is required. Just vote a straight Democrat ticket because that's what those puppets are forced to support. However, if you agree with me that one or more of these viewpoints isn't just wrong, it's dangerously wrong, you need to begin thinking about walking away. And it's not just to Republicans only, it's to President Trump specifically, and those politicians aligning themselves with the national and family value he's protecting and promoting. From this point forward, wrong is hellish and right is heavenly. Pick a lane. Just like Al Smith and Ronald Reagan walked away, there have been a lot more people walking away every day. If you need to make changes and consider an alternative viewpoint, let's have a conversation. Let's try to arrive at the right answer together as we eliminate the lies from our discussions. Deceivers work at getting us to act in ways that back up their lies, furthering their secret, selfish goals. But that is not what we're going to do, because these next many months are about exposing the deceptions that have been perpetrated on us. We're going to establish the true facts behind the manipulation by these infiltrating saboteur leaders who have been passing laws to accommodate their globalist masters, rarely reading or comprehending how we will become more enslaved by what they sign. We will come to know how these ill-conceived and executed laws don't jive with the majority of our country's moral views or values. These people have lifeless ideas because they have dead people voting them into office. These bad leaders are bringing in policies that their cold constituency likes. Scripture tells us those who hate God love death. So these globalists can count on their dead voters. That means we need to reach out and bring more people into the fray on our side. It's a numbers game at this point as far as the side people want to be on. We need to help them choose wisely. Knowledge is power. In this moment, leading up to the 2020 election, we will see more of this administration's promises made turn into promises kept. And we're going to put some really, really evil criminals away. They are prominent persons who will be taken down from their positions of authority and exposed for their treasonous and cult activities. We're going to shut these perpetrators down so we can have an honest conversation about how to proceed as a country. Free from their lies, we can't have any more manipulated and deceitful conversations based on false narratives spread into our society by a bought and paid for captured media who seek to twist the way we think, denying us the ability to have normal, natural thoughts of our own. That's what this time is about, a time for clarity in which to choose. As we take some of these corrupt influencers out of their positions of authority in the media, Hollywood, and Congress, we're going to help our friends, family, and neighbors understand what has been happening to them. When the criminals have been removed, we will begin to have a fair and honest conversation. We will start getting to the right answers. You and I may not agree with everything those near to us believe, but at least we will have an honest conversation based on truth. If all you have to go on are lies from the deceivers, how can our discussions be legitimate and fruitful? Let's get to the true facts of the matter and be done with it. They want us as their slaves because they serve Satan, and it's that simple. We cannot put up with or avert our eyes from organizations like the Cannibal Club. You heard me right. It's a real and exceedingly sinister organization that promotes and takes pleasure in eating human flesh. These cannibals claim people offer their bodies, and the club is excited to cook them up. That ghoulish practice really exists in California. Did you not know that? It's a true story. Go ahead and Google it, because that is one website Google hasn't censored. Google and other fascist social media platforms take conservative sites down day after day, and have even more so as the election has gotten closer. But they haven't taken the Human Flesh Eaters website down. They have no problem with the Cannibal Club, who brag about eating people, and that practice is no joke. So apparent, sick, and twisted practices came out from witnesses in the NXIVM sex cult trials. NXIVM was a widespread and long-running American sex crimes organization. One witness took 3 polygraph tests, lie detector tests. The person administering those tests under oath said the witness was speaking the truth. What did she testify to that our media did not want to cover? Even though the case included high-profile individuals like Hollywood movie star Allison Mack from the popular Smallville show, and Claire Brofman, heiress to the Seagram's liquor fortune, what was testified to that big media ignored because it's an enormous scandal that will also implicate media people in Hollywood before it's all over. This witness tells about a sex cult recruiting meeting that took place on an island owned by Richard Branson, Virginia Atlantic owner, in the Bahamas, just around the corner from Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. The court record exposes how this witness was shown snuff films, which are videos of actual people being murdered. With those snuff films, these people were being recruited into the NXIVM sex cult. Now, are some or all of those films fake? Who knows? But these people are attracting new members through what they think of as a sexually stimulating clips that show people being butchered, beheaded, and blown away. And of course, now they claim those deaths were fake. But who else was involved? James Alefantis was there. He's the owner of the Comet Ping Pong Pizza restaurant at the center of Pizzagate, which is about child sex trafficking and satanic rituals. In fact, Alefantis has been listed as one of the 50 most influential people in Washington, D.C. This is the person whose emails and other information came out as part of the WikiLeaks drop that led to Hillary Clinton's defeat. Those emails WikiLeaks exposed also revealed John Podesta talking about their practice of spirit cooking that stimulates cannibalism, among other disgusting practices. The Podesta brothers have been central Democrat figures for decades. John Podesta was Bill Clinton's White House chief of staff, counselor to Barack Obama, and chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And these are the people you want as your leaders, people like Katy Perry. Are they the kind you want invited to celebrate at our nation's White House? How about the Podesta brothers? You want them helping choose our leaders who make our country's policies and laws. Are you kidding me? Wake the fuck up. What are you thinking? Seriously. If you're a Democrat and you're backing these reprehensible activities is somehow okay because it's just another lifestyle, God will not look favorably on that, and neither will the rest of us citizens because we're adults who no longer put up with it in our society. I need to breathe for a second here. No, that's not in the book. Coffee. Okay. This is pretty in depth, huh? There's a lot here. I got to tell you, the reason that I started reading this out loud was a friend of mine who's blind, asked me to read it to him and his wife. And when I finished with it, they said, you should just record that and put that up online. He said, I know a bunch of other blind people that will listen. I was like, okay, they can see what I'm doing. If only they can see what I'm doing. But I'm glad that I am. It's a way for me to connect with people and to throw, throwing things. Jack O'Reno. You are such a troll. You really are. And I'm not even going to waste my time with you. All right, so moving on. Here we go. Even among prison inmates, they will not tolerate an inmate like that. That's where the pedophile murderer Jeffrey Dahmer was killed. So even criminals won't put up with that sort of pedophilia. But I'm supposed to be fine with it in my neighborhood, city, state, and country. Are you kidding me? Wake the fuck up. Get a brain in your head. If you're still asleep, now's the time to come out of the daze. There are plenty of those who were previously asleep, but are now awake to help you. Come on, seriously. This is the time to stand up and be counted as an American. It's time to think like an honest-to-goodness classic American and not be part of the fake America they have been foisting upon us. A classic, real American is never out of date in any generation, and each of us has to decide they are going to come of age. In the long shadows of all this fake news and these contrived false flag events, we are waking and growing up. They have been perpetrating a faked reality on us with the help of their father, the devil, from whom deception originated. Satan is taking delight in all that his evil, loving servants have accomplished for him. Those in our midst who are serving Lucifer need to be rooted out so we can find the truth and move on with our lives, finding a way to live and work together to preserve our way of life and a future for our kids, along with the generations that will follow. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And beyond that, what kind of an inheritance should it be? Will it be with freedom that truly gives them their own life, or an existence of perpetual slavery? For our sake and that of our children, we must fight to be free. The people who signed that document in 1776 thought the same way, as did the patriots who supported them. So they went out to that bridge at Concord and said, hell no, you got to go. Get off our soil. The situation is the same today. These people overlording us from afar have to go along with the leaders they unlawfully foisted on us with all their little schemes and maneuvers Hello, Obama. The history books tell us that Barack Obama says he was born in August 4th of 1961. Seriously? Hey, isn't that the 216th day of the year? Doesn't 6 times 6 times 6 also equal 216? Barack Obama was not born on August 4th. That birthday was assigned to him by his handlers as an indelible mark, tattoo of origins within the British intelligencea's system. When did Obama's mother visit Peace Arch Hospital in British Columbia to pick Barack, or to pick up Barack, who was already many months old? Friends who babysat Barack Obama for Mrs. Dunham in the late September and early October of 1961 have repeatedly stated that he was many months older than the 7 or 8 weeks Dunham had reported him to be. Additionally, persons who had known her from high school and who crossed paths with her in the early summer of 1961 state that she showed no indication of being pregnant, let alone in an advanced state of pregnancy for a supposedly early August birth. So who was behind all that? How many intelligence agencies were involved in that scam? We have got to get these liars and their deceiving traders out of our midst. Perhaps in the revelations to come, we will learn who the real birth parents of Barack Obama are. But they most certainly are not Stanley Ann Dunham or Barack Obama Sr. Coincidentally, it is significant and interesting that Barack Obama's assigned birthday is the same as the Queen Mother's birthday, the Queen of the mother of Queen Elizabeth II, which is August 4th, 1900. When Stanley Dunham took possession of baby Barack in order to further her operational cover and preparation for her move to Indonesia, she locked in her lifelong grifter role on the CIA's payroll. Of course, she did because it's the family business. The Dunhams are globalista, deep cover agents. I've spoken at length on several occasions about how Stanley Dunham was a lifelong CIA asset, but how many of you knew she was also Supergirl? Let's see if any of our sleuths can find a picture of Stanley Ann Dunham and Loretta Fuddy in the same room at the same time. Someday soon we will revisit that story. Stanley Ann Dunham accepted Barack as a prop in a long-term deep cover operation. When Barack's presence became cumbersome, his care was handed back to Dunham's mother, Toots Dunham, who was also a CIA asset. Toots was the personal banker for Ferdinand Marcos. Really? She handled their personal billions when they went into exile in Hawaii. How about Mark Zuckerberg? Is he a business genius, as they claim? Did he come up with Facebook because he's a computer programming whiz kid? No, he's just a puppet, a pawn, used by others to bring them more money and further their goals. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, developed the social media platform model, which we now know as Facebook. U.S. taxpayer money perfected the militarized social tracking tool, and the technology was handed over to private parties to pirate over us. It happens over and over. Business models are gamed out with supercomputer business modeling, takeover programs. Once perfected, they are handed over to trusted frontmen and businesses. That's why these business leaders are so sold out and owned by the deep state. What about George Soros? Pay close attention to this. Do you think, let's start that one over. What about George Soros? Pay close attention to this. Do you think Dr. Evil became mega wealthy because he's more of an investment genius than most anyone else? Are you kidding me? Soros is an asshole and an idiot. Do you hear me, George? Hey, you're another one of those Georges out there, huh? Well, you are a false George. What about all that money he supposedly got from shorting the British pound? Well, was he probably given a pretty good idea of what was going to happen to the pound? Based on Britain's actions leveraging their economy, do you suppose some political leaders, MI5, MI6, or any of the bankers there in the city of London had a clue years in advance of what they were going to do to the pound? Of course they did. The whole thing was just one more scam. They wanted to rake in an enormous score of cash, so they let some cardboard cutout, Soros, know that they were going to put a pile of cash in his hands. In order to keep a share of it, all he had to do was distribute most of the money to different groups his benefactors told him to. It was all just another ordinary money laundering operation, really no different than when Obama gave $152 billion to Iran, over half of which was then laundered through Ukraine and the Vatican Bank and onto political movements and politicians around the world with one primary goal, which was to get Trump at all costs by any means possible. Soros is only one more of their figureheads. Did you know that George Soros was the most frequent civilian visitor to the White House during Obama's first term? Can you believe it? George fucking Soros. I'm saying fucking again because he's fucking screwing everybody. Why would he do that to us? It's because he's a globalist British agent. Don't you get that it's just another of their scams? But wait, we know Barack Obama doesn't like these mean territory invading colonialists like England, right? Am I forgetting the White House bust of Winston Churchill that Obama had sent back to England? Hey, he showed them, right? I guess Obama and England just don't get along, right? Wrong. There's another scam. Do you still buy that one? Completely contrary to false narrative, the British had their agent Soros stay very close to Obama there in the White House to dictate whatever England wanted done. Obama was their other insider guy, shaking Soros's hand at each visit and asking, "What can American people do for you today, George?" Are you kidding me? If you're a Democrat, do you seriously want to continue that? Are you okay with it? I know this is a sensitive subject for a lot of you, and I'll lose some on this, but why does Soros back the free and open use of marijuana? I understand the medicinal aspects, and it's even used medicinally to help our soldiers. I get that. However, they call it dope for a reason. Like any medicine that may have good purpose, it can also be abused, causing real damage. But we're taught that Soros is backing it to do good for our country. No, that's another false narrative. He wants to collectively dumb down our population. He'd like us to self-pollute and self-delete, so as many as possible in our society will end up at a point of desperation where they no longer have their wits about them. And why would they want a dumbed down herd? They more likely retain control and continue to run things from a higher percentage of dull creatures in the populace. They keep us fed and entertained. Bread and circuses, a tactic going back to the Roman times, while also occupying our time with plenty to build, create, post, browse, and text. They keep keep us chilling out and caught up in fake news. Their purposes are served when we check out. Are you going to be a sheep for them, going along with all their schemes because it's what they want you to do? That's the devil's way. Our choice is good versus evil in this moment. You've got two simple options. Will it be heaven or hell? Are groping Joe Biden and headbanging Harris the leaders you want? Are you kidding me? These never-Trumpers, whether Democrat or Republican, have a hellish trajectory for America. As I also referenced in my presentation at Jennifer Mack's YouTube channel, Choose This Day. It's our heavenly course as opposed to the insane path of Joe Biden. The world of Joe Biden and his handlers, like hell itself, have no reason. An eternity without reason hell is a place with no reason. With Biden and his kind, you'll be getting back to the same skull and bones crowd that gave us both Bushes and John Kerry. Again, those who hate God love death. Hey, that's on them. If they want a little handshake club where they have ceremonies in the dark that involve people laying in coffins with skulls and bones surrounding them, fine, let them have it. However, are those the people you want running your country? People like that lying, cheating piece of shit John Kerry, who's been illegally lobbying in Iran over the last couple of years against the interests of the United States and our president? Where do these people get all the money to give world leaders like the $152 billion Obama gave Iran, which supported the globalist goal to make Iran one of the best enemies money could buy? These sorts of payoffs happen over and over and over. And by the way, what did Obama get in return? Where do you suppose the technology came from that went into North Korea, helping prop up another bought and paid for enemy? Shouldn't someone be talking to Eric Schmidt about that? Who else has been in North Korea, handing over computer technology and printing presses to put out perfect American dollars for North Korea to export? Where did they get the supplies to do that, including all that silk paper they needed? Who's been funding these operations against our U.S. interests, creating and supporting paid-for enemies like Russia with truck plants and other technology? Also, who helped Germany build their infrastructure for both wars and the Middle East being given a context for their wars? As prophesied by Bible centuries before, why did the satanic cult, which includes the Rothschilds, help God's people, Israel, get a homeland in 1948? The globalists wanted a huge enemy for the rest of the Middle East to keep division and war going there. When the cabal gave Israel back the land of God promised they would own when the cabal gave Israel back the land God promised they would own forever, he was putting another hook in the evil's mouth to do his will, as God often does. As the Q team has said many times, these people are stupid. Under their lord, Lucifer, they want 3 world wars to bring about their global new world order. How did they get us into the First World War? It was an attack by Germany on the British ship Lusitania. To get the U.S. involved, they used that false flag, sleight of hand by the wizards and magicians, to bait us into doing their bidding when we would not have done so had we known the truth. It wasn't it cute of them to name their ritual sacrifice ship the Lucifertania? And speaking of the devil, what money backed the origins of the United Nations? Have you heard of the Lucis Trust or Lucifer's Trust? At its founding in 1920, they blatantly called it Lucifer Publishing. That later changed the name to Lucis Trust. And where did New York's later destroyed Twin Towers come from? It was Nelson Rockefeller, the same guy who also donated the grounds for New York's United Nations building. The UN building was placed on an old slaughterhouse property that conveniently was already a sacrificial site from the countless animals slaughtered on that location. Like the massacre they perpetrated with the Atlantic, what was the deal with those massive towers being dropped by an orchestrated demolition on 9/11? From the beginning, both towers were designed and built by Rockefeller to eventually come crashing down. Year by year and decade by decade, we are watching these people playing out their machinations against us. But right now, it is high noon in America as the sun is setting on these criminals. And what you're about to see over the next couple of years is those people coming off the street for good cause. Your readers must be ready to give a solid account to your family, friends, neighbors, and anyone else who needs it. That message is simply this: slaves no more. They have not only been trying to enslave us through our minds and ideals, twisting the way we think, but also attempting to alter our tastes, those things we tolerate and desire. Concerning the Beatles back in 1966, to some accounts, Paul McCartney was very upset with the Yesterday and Today album cover that was first produced. It depicted the idea of slaughtered baby parts placed all over the band members. It is also said that his protest is why the grotesque photo was pulled back. At that time in England, the band had traveled with Jimmy Savile, who acted as master of ceremonies for some of their shows. Apparently, Paul was aware of Jimmy Savile's appetite for children, and Paul couldn't stomach it. With that in mind, there are questions about the mechanism of death for Paul McCartney and whether some powerful people felt he needed to be taken out before he ended up saying something. Another disturbing aspect of the Beatles story has to do with the earlier mentioned Tavistock Institute, Britain's social engineering organization that helped create and present that band to the world. On the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, there were many interesting characters, including a key figure, Aleister Crowley. You could say Crowley was the leader of the band, so to speak. He was also a Satanist who embraced and relished his title as the evilest man that ever lived. Crowley worked well with the whole Tavistock theme that also had influence over Hollywood. But those who think the legacy of Aleister Crowley is fine and it's cool if he just had a different way of approaching the world, you are assisting and nourishing the propagation of evil, pure evil, into our world. This is not easy to hear, but needs to be said. Crowley essentially claimed to have spent almost half the year after year, killing people as sacrifices. He especially relished murdering little boys. He was also passionate about raping small children because this evil man considered it a right of Osiris to do so from behind, as part of the Eye of Horus mind-opening ritual. Yet with all that, this satanic, demonic contact point was someone they tolerated having in their house on the cover of their album. One of the people I enjoy, Linda McAllister, who was a veteran producer, animator, and art director for CNN, ESPN, and other networks. Linda had an album of memorabilia from her grandfather that included Masonic emblems. That was enough background to give her context for what she observed when working over the years at those media outlets. Linda came of age as she realized what their emblems and their symbols mean. She began to understand that they're touch points to the dark side or demonic realm. And as such, by keeping those satanic trinkets in her home, those memorabilia served as touchstones for the entities associated with them to be able to attach themselves to her, giving those evil spirits the legal right to be part of her life. When she realized that, she took the jewelry out into her yard and buried it all. She certainly didn't want to store them in her garage, giving them away, or even throwing them in the garbage where they might survive in some landfill and be found 100 years from now. She utterly destroyed them, not taking the chance that they might later damage another person or somehow allow them a way back into her life. Our present national leader took a similar precaution. As mentioned, after Trump won the election, but before moving into the White House, the family had to have a cleansing ceremony performed to get Satan kicked out of our country's top resident. Lucifer needed to be evicted from the White House before Melania would go in, thank goodness. Thank God in heaven for people with that kind of conviction in this day and at this hour. The problem has been that we've had leaders who would avert their eyes, they would countenance evil in our national institutes, just like our fellow citizens have also done. This is a moment about good and evil. the revelations will steadily come out over the next couple of years about just how far gone many of these people have been with what they've accepted, what they have done, and those things they are still willing to do. That's when you're going to have to be able to dig deeper and to decide what level of evil you'll accept. Is just a tinge of evil okay? What's your threshold? Where is your line in the sand? Besides being about slavery, this also concerns heaven and hell, both individually and as a nation. I say that in a serious and solemn way because we cannot be trite about it. It has to do with eternal decisions as well as your kids and grandkids. What kind of world are you going to hand them? Is it one where we look up to those who advocate human flesh as supposedly the best food with the most nutrition? Hey, they tell us it has health benefits no other food does. Are you serious? Stop for a minute. Have a drink of water. Think again. See clearly. Come out of your doze and wake the fuck up. As a nation, we cannot condone that kind of behavior, and these sorts of people in our midst, our acceptance is a gateway for evil into our government and society. We have a long road ahead, and I don't think Washington, D.C. can really be cleaned up. It can't be fixed because it's already fixed as a rigged game. My advice to President Trump is that that has a pleasant and reverent ring to it, right? President Trump is that he hire all his contractor buddies and have them get together and as much fencing materials and heavy equipment as they could possibly muster, and then bring it all to D.C. under the protection of Marine Guards utilizing close in-air support. They should proceed to surround D.C. with multiple layers of chain link fence and concertina wire like we did at the city of Fallujah in Iraq. Simultaneously, we need to have all available military and armored National Guard units surround the city at the Beltway. His next move is to have a military aircraft bomb the area with pamphlets just as warnings are blasted out on megaphones in every needed language, advising those in D.C. to immediately get out of the city. Exit checkpoints can be manned by military guards utilizing metal detectors. They should strip search and identify, as well as process and interrogate every seditious and treasonous conspirator they find. We are not letting any incriminating evidence, national security secrets, or treasures get out. Announcements will follow, like the following must be absolutely clear. After 3 days, anyone remaining will be considered an enemy combatant. Because we can't risk the safety of even one beautiful patriot who will be part of invading that remaining mire in the depths of that swamp, where there will still be legions of demonic leviathan with unimaginable grossness and depravity. Once the exodus process is complete, the world will watch our Army Corps of Engineers divert the Potomac River and flood that snake and rat-infested city, flushing it out. Firefighters from around the globe can join in and turn their hoses on the city in honor of their fallen comrades at the World Trade Center buildings and the other heroes who have been sacrificed by the cabal. And by the way, this won't be one of those green toilet, low-volume flushes. In fact, we need to turn on the weather machines we know are out there and target a few gully washer storms to come through in order to complete our divinely appointed task. And by the way, just for good measure, I suggest we throw in one hell of a night, shock and awe, lightning storm to boot. It would be great entertainment for the gathering crowds. Hey, go outside and bark if you're going to bark. Don't do it halfway in and out. There. Get up. President Trump should also request that patriot citizens show up for this national effort with all the toilet bowl cleaner they can lay their hands on, after which they'll provide that to the military guard units so that the cleaner can be dispersed into that soupy DC cauldron ASAP. God in his heaven knows it's going to take several flushes and plenty of Drano to clear those filthy pipes, all the while we, the citizen soldiers, will be keeping a sharp eye out for any of the blue-dyed toilet water and the swamp creatures that might be attempting to escape through the tunnels, coming out at strange places, even though hundreds of miles, some even hundreds of miles away. But now many of you know about the underground tunnels, including the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. So we are not dropping our guard. I say we carry out 40 days and 40 flushes. Hey, just to be sure, God knows, maybe the total flushes should be more like 41 or 44. We'll see. Next, with the extreme care of their safety, we can use the forensic-like surgical precision of our special forces and tunnel clearing teams to go in door by door, underground room by underground room, and vault to vault. We will document all of the incriminating evidence for the world to see. These teams must clear that pit out, never to be occupied again after that clearing operation is completed. The only course forward is to leave the now twisted and chaotic landscape with its symbolic debris as a spectacle for the world to ponder, a perpetual monument to the insanity of these groups who seek to manipulate us children of Adam as we peaceably seek to live under the rule of our God in heaven, not the Luciferian-inspired lovers of death and perversion who have been in control. Over time, in a type of bureaucratic justice that is best delivered by Mother Nature herself, the weight, or God, the weight of their own evil will slowly and incrementally digest and swallow their unholy and abandoned city and those who aligned with it. Beneath that swamp's murky shores, after a while, even the memory of that decimated ritual city and its evils will be only byline in future biblical narrative of divine warnings given to the later generations in eons to come. We are going to go back to right, sound, and godly thinking. We will be humans and not like these monsters who have taken over our country and way of life. I hope all you dear readers decide to be counted, finding a way to join us, close ranks, and be recognized by each other in the spirit of that kid standing at the side of the road. During that solemn moment, after the coup was consummated with the assassination of our president, for those who are constantly trying to control us, our message is this: we won't take it anymore. We are no longer your slaves, and you won't be picking any of us out of the crowd to snipe us individually because we just a few solitary nails here and there. We are all sticking up for each other and our country. I am a nail sticking up. Take a look at this face. I doubt your facial recognition scanners can get past the common masks we wear to make a point. Are we all looking like John Jr. or his president father? Or do our masks remind you of any other atrocity you committed? When we march together under a common banner wearing the same mask, can your facial recognition scanners pick just one of us out of a crowd? Here in America, we have our own masks for the revolution. We wear the masks of our heroes. There are several whom we desire to emulate during this revolution against you and your evil father, Satan. You'll get these masks along with our middle fingers. Yeah, we are all that kid who has needed to and now is coming of age in time to finally reverse the coup and recapture America. As one of a couple final thoughts I want to say, it should be very clear by now that these people will not go away without a fight. They believe in a centralized government and the full power of it, which is the opposite of this president. But neither you nor I can give up or go away. You know, at the inauguration, when Bill Clinton became president, he condemned Carol Quigley, the author of Tragedy and Hope, a book that praises the secret power families who had been working for generations to create this new world order. These people are also not going to go away, especially just because of some words used against them. We will need to wrestle and root them out from the inside. exposing their fake leaders, stars, talking head media propagandists, and all the rest of the false front apparatus they've built over decades. We must lay bare the phony money operations they've foisted on us through lies to take over our country and our currency. We need to uproot the fake leaders of industry as well as the lies about our tax system. We must stop those who would use our money to promote the globalist agenda against the American people and the best interest of all the world's occupants. They've stolen the money from each of us and others. Scriptures Isaiah 3:5 talks about every man being oppressed by his neighbor. If that's not federal taxes and central government, I don't know what is. We're now at a pivotal moment, so communications are everything. Their whole tactic is to stop us from sharing information, to keep us from being seen and recognized by each other. They'd like us to dance and walk the way they want. But again, I say to their facial recognition, do you recognize this middle finger in front of my mask? Hello. Yeah, we're all doing that at you. So go ahead and try picking just one of us out of a crowd. The last thing I'll mention is this. We have people looking at this electronic frontier with its spying into every aspect of our life, this intrusion of government by remote control, artificial intelligence. It involves all aspects of surveillance that they want to foist on us, to hold down, chain, and enslave us. As the three-letter agency outsider, the American writer John Perry Barlow was a wonderful guy who could clearly see the future consequences from this Tholian web of technology being built for humankind and the technocracy these globalists are engineering for our establishment or our enslavement. Enslavement. Barlow warned us about what was coming. We only have a moment left to pull ourselves back from the brink of the cliff. Please, Father God in heaven, protect our president, his family, and the families of those people who have taken a stand. Draw a line in the sand and pen their name to paper, just as our founders did, deciding to go up against monsters so that we have a country in which to live free. Up to this moment, we as individuals, a nation, and a whole planet of people are still captives to the events of that day, of that Dallas day in 1963. America has been a captured operation that is still being held back from our dreams, best hopes, and aspirations. Since that day, America has been in an MKUltra, trauma-induced and programmed state, which has been able to keep people from growing mentally, emotionally, even developmentally. We've been militarized in our development and diverted from a godly and wholesome path to a destructive one for ourselves and the rest of the world. Until justice is meted out in that 1963 matter, along with all the other mischief that has followed, we will not become the people, nation, and humanity that God intended for us. The scripture says, who will be valiant for justice' sake? That is our prayer, our battle cry. And that is it for chapter 2.
Okay, folks. That's it for chapter 2.
It's always amazing to see troll.
History online and some video sharing platforms. Just as the evil Haman ended up hoisted on his own petard today too, we have been
I don't know
flipping
what's
our
up on the
situation.
phone.
We're taking control of the way our country functions, as well as other corrupt systems out into the rest of the world.
I'm not very good with technology. But, yeah, that was a lot. Kid by the Side of the Road, chapter 2. Try to come up with some more soon. But that's it for now. You can see, all this stuff at QAnonProfit.org/Savin. I'll link it in at boatratmatt.com. And it's not all together totally yet, but I'll get it together. So just keep going back to QAnonProfit.org or boatratmatt.com, and you can find the Juan Savin video book updates. Leave it at that for now. You guys have a good night. God bless you. God bless America. Take care.